Alan Mitchell's genitals were about to determine the fate of humanity. As he stood before Queen Spica, leader of the Iconians, in her crystalline throne room, he knew that the next few moments would either save Earth or doom it to destruction. The Iconians, a technologically superior alien race, had threatened to obliterate Earth unless humans could prove their worth. Alan, a seasoned diplomat, had been chosen for this critical mission. His task, negotiate peace and prevent interstellar war. The pressure was immense, but he was humanity's best hope. Queen Spica regarded Alan with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. Her iridescent skin shimmered under the alien light, and her luminous eyes bore into him with an intensity that made him shiver. The Iconians were known for their cold logic and disdain for emotional beings, but Alan hadn't expected the physical revulsion evident in the Queen's expression. "You will undergo a full-body scan," Queen Spica commanded, her voice melodious yet devoid of warmth. "We must ensure you carry no weapons." Alan nodded, stepping onto a circular platform. A beam of light enveloped him, and holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber. The Iconian guards studied the results, their faces contorting in shock and disgust. Queen Spica's eyes widened as she focused on a particular area of the scan. "What is that primitive appendage?" she demanded, pointing at the holographic representation of Alan's reproductive organs. Alan realized with a start that Iconian biology must be vastly different from human anatomy. He saw an opportunity in their reaction, a chance to turn the situation to humanity's advantage. "Your Majesty," Alan began, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "what you see is a crucial part of human biology and culture. It's integral to our reproduction and relationships." The Queen's disgust mingled with intrigue. "Explain further," she commanded. Alan took a deep breath. "I propose a private demonstration of human mating practices," he said, knowing the boldness of his suggestion. "It will provide valuable insight into our biology and culture, allowing you to better understand us as a species." Murmurs of shock rippled through the Iconian court. Queen Spica's luminous eyes narrowed, considering the proposal. Alan could see the calculations running behind those alien orbs, the potential intelligence to be gathered about a potential enemy. "Very well," Queen Spica declared after a tense moment. "We shall retire to a private chamber. This demonstration may prove enlightening." As they left the throne room, Alan felt the weight of Earth's fate on his shoulders. The success of his unorthodox diplomacy remained uncertain. Outside the private chamber, Iconian guards took up positions, ready to intervene if the human proved hostile. Alan knew that the next few hours would determine the future of human-Iconian relations. As the door closed behind them, he steeled himself for the most important performance of his life. The fate of Earth now rested on his ability to impress an alien queen with human sexuality. As the door closed behind them, Alan felt the weight of Earth's fate pressing down on his shoulders. The private chamber was a stark contrast to the crystalline throne room, adorned with alien artifacts and bathed in a soft, pulsating light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Queen Spica stood rigidly at the center of the room, her iridescent skin shimmering with an otherworldly glow, her luminous eyes fixed on Alan, a mixture of scientific curiosity and deep-seated revulsion evident in her gaze. "Proceed with your demonstration," she commanded, her melodious voice tinged with apprehension. Alan took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. He began by explaining the basics of human reproduction, his voice calm and measured despite the gravity of the situation. "Humans reproduce sexually," he started, watching as Queen Spica's expression shifted from disgust to fascination. "Our bodies are designed for internal fertilization, which occurs through a process called intercourse." As Alan delved into the intricacies of human anatomy, he noticed the Queen's initial horror gradually giving way to genuine interest. Her luminous eyes widened as she absorbed the information, occasionally interrupting with probing questions. "This method of reproduction seems inefficient and messy," Queen Spica remarked, her tone a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "How has your species survived?" Alan smiled softly, recognizing an opportunity to bridge the gap between their cultures. "While it may seem primitive to your advanced society, our method of reproduction has allowed for the development of complex emotional bonds and social structures. Sensing the Queen's growing interest, Alan made a bold decision. "Your Majesty, if you're willing, I believe a practical demonstration would provide valuable insights into human biology and culture." Queen Spisa's iridescent skin flickered with an array of colors, betraying her inner conflict. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded her assent. With deliberate movements, Alan began to remove his clothing, explaining the purpose of each garment as he did so. The Queen watched intently, her eyes widening as more of Alan's body was revealed. When Alan stood fully nude before her, Queen Spisa's reaction was a complex mixture of shock, revulsion, and undeniable intrigue. She cautiously approached, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial repulsion. "Your external genitalia are exposed," she observed, her voice a whisper. "Does this not leave you vulnerable?" Alan explained the evolutionary advantages of human anatomy, noting how it facilitated both reproduction and pleasure. As he spoke, he gently guided Queen Spisa through human foreplay techniques, demonstrating the various erogenous zones on his body. To his surprise, the Queen's iridescent skin began to glow with a soft, pulsating light. Alan recognized this as a sign of Iconian arousal, realizing that despite their biological differences, there might be more similarities between their species than initially thought. Encouraged by the Queen's positive response, Alan proceeded to demonstrate various human sexual positions and techniques. He moved slowly, always seeking her consent before each new action. Queen Spica's initial terror at the thought of penetration gave way to excitement as she experienced new sensations. The combination of physical pleasure and the thrill of the unknown sent waves of euphoria through her alien body. "This is unexpected," she gasped, her melodious voice quivering with emotion. "The sensations are unlike anything in Iconian biology." As their encounter reached its climax, Queen Spica experienced her first human-induced orgasm. The intensity of the experience caused her to emit a burst of bioluminescence, filling the chamber with a dazzling light show. Alarmed by the sudden display, the guards outside burst into the room, weapons drawn. They found their queen in a state of blissful exhaustion, with Alan standing protectively beside her. "Stand down," Queen Spica ordered, her voice weak but commanding. The guards hesitated, confusion evident in their alien features. As Alan dressed, he noticed a profound shift in Queen Spica's demeanor. The cold, logical exterior had cracked, revealing a more emotionally receptive being. Her luminous eyes regarded him with a newfound warmth and curiosity. "This encounter has provided valuable insights into human biology and culture," she declared, her voice still trembling slightly. "I will need time to process this new information before making any decisions regarding Earth's fate." Alan nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "Thank you for your openness, Your Majesty. I hope this experience has helped foster a deeper understanding between our species." As he was escorted from the chamber, Alan could hear the buzz of excitement spreading through the Iconian royal court. Rumors and speculation ran wild, with some officials calling for immediate action, while others argued for further study of human culture. In the holding area, Alan sat quietly, his mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. He had taken an enormous risk, but it seemed to have paid off. The fate of Earth now hung in the balance, dependent on Queen Spica's interpretation of their encounter. As he waited for the Queen's decision, Alan began to formulate plans for his next diplomatic maneuver. He knew that this was just the beginning of a complex negotiation process. The future of human-Iconian relations would require careful navigation of alien politics, biology, and newfound emotions. Through the holding area's translucent walls, Alan could see the Iconian capital stretching out before him, a vast, shimmering metropolis that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Somewhere in that alien landscape, Queen Spica was contemplating the fate of humanity. Alan closed his eyes, hoping that the connection they had forged would be enough to save his world. As Alan sat in the holding area, his mind raced with possibilities. The translucent walls offered a view of the Iconian capital, a shimmering metropolis that defied Earth's architectural norms. He closed his eyes, hoping that his unconventional diplomatic approach had been enough to save his world. The door slid open with a soft hiss, interrupting Alan's thoughts. An Iconian guard entered, followed by a slender female alien with iridescent skin that shimmered with subtle patterns of light. "I am Lyra," she announced, her melodious voice tinged with scientific curiosity. "I've been assigned to conduct a thorough biological examination of you, Alan Mitchell." Alan nodded, standing up. "I understand. I'm ready to cooperate fully." Lyra led him to an adjacent laboratory filled with unfamiliar equipment. The room hummed with energy, and holographic displays flickered to life as they entered. "Please disrobe and stand on the central platform," Lyra instructed, her clinical tone betraying no emotion. As Alan complied, he noticed Lyra's eyes widening slightly. She quickly composed herself and began the examination, using a handheld device to scan his body. "Fascinating," she murmured, studying the results. "Your internal structure is quite different from ours." Alan seized the opportunity to engage her. "I'd be happy to explain our anatomy if you have any questions." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Your reproductive system? It's unlike anything I've studied before. How does it function?" For the next hour, Alan patiently explained human physiology, answering Lyra's increasingly personal questions. As the conversation progressed, he noticed her professional demeanor beginning to crack. "And these intimate acts," Lyra asked, her voice lowering, "they serve purposes beyond reproduction?" Alan nodded. "They're an important part of human bonding and emotional connection." Lyra's skin flickered with patterns of light, betraying her growing interest. "We Iconians reproduce through a clinical process. The concept of physical intimacy is foreign to us." As Alan elaborated on human relationships, he saw something change in Lyra's eyes. The cold scientific detachment gave way to a spark of curiosity and warmth. Meanwhile, in the royal chambers, Queen Spisa faced her most trusted advisor, Ambassador Zorn. The Queen's usually composed demeanor was noticeably shaken. "This human, Alan Mitchell," Spisa began, her voice quivering slightly, "has introduced concepts that challenge everything we know about interspecies relations." Zorn's expression remained impassive. "Your Majesty, we must approach this situation with caution. One encounter, no matter how intense, should not dictate our entire foreign policy." Spica's skin flashed with irritation. "You weren't there, Zorn. You didn't experience what I did." "Precisely why we need a more objective approach," Zorn countered. "I propose a series of controlled experiments. Let us determine if your reaction was unique or if it indicates a broader compatibility between our species." The Queen considered this, her luminous eyes narrowing. "What do you suggest?" "A limited cultural exchange program," Zorn explained. "We allow a small group of humans to visit Iconia while sending our own researchers to Earth. This will provide valuable data without committing to any irreversible decisions." After a moment of tense silence, Spica nodded. "Very well, but I want Alan Mitchell to remain here as my personal liaison during the exchange." Zorn's antennae twitched, betraying his surprise. "Is that wise, Your Majesty?" "It's decided," Spica declared, her tone brooking no argument. As preparations for the exchange program began, Alan was released from the holding area. An Iconian official briefed him on the new developments, explaining his role as the Queen's personal liaison. Alan's heart raced with a mixture of relief and excitement. Earth had been granted a reprieve, and he now had the opportunity to further improve relations between their species. As he was escorted to his new quarters, Alan passed Lyra in the corridor. Their eyes met, and he noticed a faint glow emanating from her skin. She quickly looked away, but not before Alan caught a glimpse of the conflicting emotions playing across her alien features. In his room, Alan activated a communication device, establishing a secure link with Earth. The face of General Hawthorne, his superior, appeared on the screen. "Mitchell, we've received word of the exchange program," Hawthorne said, his expression grave. "The global reaction is mixed. Some see it as a step towards peace, others fear it's a trap." Alan nodded. "I understand the concerns, sir, but I believe this is our best chance to prevent interstellar war." "Agreed," Hawthorne replied. "We're selecting candidates for the program now. Any advice?" "Choose individuals who can adapt quickly and communicate effectively," Alan suggested. "And sir, there's something else you should know. As Alan explained the Iconians' reaction to human sexuality, Hawthorne's eyebrows rose higher and higher. Mitchell, are you telling me that you, with the alien queen? Alan cleared his throat. It was a diplomatic necessity, sir. Hawthorne shook his head, a mix of disbelief and grudging admiration on his face. Well, it seems to have worked, but be careful, Mitchell. We're in uncharted territory here. As the communication ended, Alan gazed out at the alien cityscape. The fate of Earth now rested on the success of this cultural exchange. He knew the challenges ahead would be immense, but he also saw an opportunity to bridge the gap between two vastly different species. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Alan opened it to find Queen Spica standing there, her luminous eyes filled with an intensity that made his breath catch. "We have much to discuss, Alan Mitchell," she said, her melodious voice sending a shiver down his spine. "Shall we begin?" "Continue our discussions," Queen Spica finished, stepping into Alan's quarters. The door slid shut behind her, leaving them alone in the softly lit room. Alan felt his heart rate quicken, acutely aware of the Queen's proximity and the weight of their shared experience. "Your Majesty," he began, "I'm honored by your trust in me. How can I assist you?" Spica's luminous eyes studied him intently. "The cultural exchange program has begun, Alan. The first group of human diplomats and scientists arrived today, led by Dr. Emma Young." Alan nodded, relief washing over him. "That's excellent news. How are they settling in?" "They seem overwhelmed," Spica admitted, her skin shimmering with subtle patterns of light. "The capital city's architecture and technology have left them in awe. But there's something else I've noticed." She paused, her gaze dropping to the floor. Alan waited patiently, sensing her internal struggle. "They appear confused by our demeanor," Spica continued. "The cold, detached nature of most Iconians seems to unsettle them. It's so different from—" Her voice trailed off, her eyes meeting Alan's once more. Understanding dawned on Alan. "Different from how I've described you, Your Majesty?" Spica's skin flashed with a burst of color. "Yes. Alan, I must confess something. Since our encounter, I've been experiencing unusual emotional responses. Dreams, longings for physical closeness, concepts that were entirely foreign to me before." Alan's mind raced, recognizing the potential diplomatic implications of this revelation. He chose his words carefully. "Your Majesty, these new experiences could be invaluable in fostering understanding between our species. Perhaps we should explore these feelings further, in the interest of diplomacy, of course." Spica nodded, her posture relaxing slightly. "I agree. But we must proceed with caution. There are those in the court who view the human presence as a threat." As if on cue, a chime sounded, indicating an incoming communication. Spica activated a holographic display, revealing the stern face of Ambassador Zorn. "Your Majesty," Zorn began, his antennae twitching with agitation. "I must speak with you immediately. It's regarding the human researchers and their findings." Spica's eyes narrowed. "What findings, Ambassador?" Zorn hesitated, his gaze flicking to Alan. "Perhaps it would be best to discuss this in private, Your Majesty." "Alan stays," Spica declared firmly. "He is my personal liaison after all. Speak freely, Ambassador." Zorn's discomfort was palpable, even through the holographic projection. "Very well. Dr. Young and her team have made a rather startling discovery. It appears that Iconian physiology is more compatible with human sexual practices than we initially believed." Alan felt a jolt of surprise, while Spica's skin rippled with a complex pattern of light. Zorn continued, his voice strained. "They hypothesized that introducing human-like intimacy to Iconian society could lead to significant psychological and physiological benefits for our species. They believe it could revolutionize our approach to relationships and reproduction." Silence fell over the room as the implications of this information sank in. Alan watched Spica carefully, noting the interplay of emotions across her alien features. After a long moment, Spica spoke, her voice filled with a newfound tenacity. "Ambassador Zorn, I want to propose a more extensive cultural integration program. We will seek volunteers among our people to learn and experience human mating practices firsthand. Zorn's antennae went rigid with shock. Your Majesty, surely you can't be serious. The potential risks are outweighed by the potential benefits, Spica interrupted. This could be a groundbreaking step towards interspecies understanding. We cannot ignore this opportunity. Alan's mind whirled with the possibilities. He could already imagine the shockwaves this announcement would send through both Iconian and human societies. Zorn's holographic form seemed to deflate slightly. If this is your decision, Your Majesty, then I will support it. However, I must insist on strict protocols and safety measures to prevent any potential cultural contamination or biological risks. Spica nodded her agreement. Of course, Ambassador, we will proceed with utmost caution. She turned to Alan, her eyes bright with excitement. Alan, I'm tasking you with developing a comprehensive education program on human sexuality for our volunteers. Can you handle this responsibility? Alan swallowed hard, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. Yes, Your Majesty. I'll do my best to ensure the program is thorough, respectful, and safe for all participants. As the holographic display winked out, leaving Alan and Spica alone once more, neither of them could have imagined the storm brewing on the horizon. In a secluded chamber deep within the Iconian military complex, General Kraz was gathering his most trusted officers. The humans have corrupted our queen, Kraz growled, his skin pulsing with angry red patterns. Their so-called sexuality is nothing more than a form of mind control. We cannot allow this threat to spread any further. The gathered officers murmured in agreement, their faces set with unyielding commitment. Kraz's eyes narrowed as he outlined his plan. We will send a team of our most elite operatives to Earth. They will gather intelligence, identify key targets, and prepare for a preemptive strike. It's the only way to protect our society from human influence. As the conspirators began to mobilize, the fate of both species hung in the balance. The coming days would test the limits of Alan's diplomatic skills and push the boundaries of interspecies relations to their breaking point. The coming days would test the limits of Alan's diplomatic skills and push the boundaries of interspecies relations to their breaking point. As the cultural integration program began in earnest, Alan found himself at the center of a storm of activity. Queen Spica, her curiosity about human intimacy now insatiable, had personally selected a group of 20 Iconian volunteers for Alan's education program. The participants, a mix of inquisitive scientists and open-minded citizens, gathered in a specially designed facility that blended the austere aesthetics of Iconian architecture with the warm, inviting atmosphere Alan had suggested. Standing before the volunteers, Alan felt the weight of his responsibility. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves as he began the first lesson. Welcome, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. Today we embark on a journey of discovery that will bridge the gap between our species in ways we've never imagined. As Alan launched into a comprehensive overview of human anatomy and sexual practices, he noticed the Iconians' initial apprehension. Their luminous eyes widened, and patterns of light flickered across their skin, betraying their mix of curiosity and unease. The human body, Alan explained, gesturing to a holographic display, is designed for both reproduction and pleasure. Unlike Iconian reproduction, human mating involves direct physical contact. A murmur rippled through the group. One volunteer, a slender Iconian with iridescent skin, raised a hand. But isn't such contact unsanitary? Alan smiled, recognizing the opportunity to address a common misconception. Actually, human bodies have evolved to make intimate contact not only safe but also highly pleasurable and emotionally bonding. As the lesson progressed, Alan introduced more advanced concepts, carefully gauging the Iconians' reactions. When he reached the topic of kissing, he noticed a shift in the room's atmosphere. The volunteers leaned forward, their attention rapt. Kissing, Alan said, is often considered the gateway to deeper intimacy. It involves the touching of lips and can convey a wide range of emotions. He activated a holographic simulation, demonstrating various kissing techniques. The Iconians watched, transfixed, as the holographic figures embraced. Suddenly, a gasp echoed through the room. Alan turned to see one of the volunteers, a young Iconian scientist, trembling slightly. Patterns of light danced across her skin in a way Alan had never seen before. "Are you all right?" he asked, concerned. The Iconian nodded, her voice quivering. I felt something, a sensation I've never experienced before. It was pleasant." As other volunteers reported similar feelings, Alan realized they were experiencing their first rush of unfamiliar, pleasurable sensations. The atmosphere in the room shifted from clinical curiosity to palpable excitement. Meanwhile, in a research facility across the city, Dr. Emma Young hunched over a microscope, her brow furrowed in concentration. She had been working tirelessly since her arrival on Iconia, studying the biological differences between humans and their alien hosts. "Dr. Young," her assistant called out, rushing into the lab, "you need to see this." Emma hurried over to a holographic display showing Iconian cellular structure. As she studied the image, her eyes widened in disbelief. "It can't be," she murmured. But the evidence was clear. Exposure to human pheromones had triggered a dormant gland in Iconian physiology, causing the release of hormones remarkably similar to those involved in human sexual arousal. "This changes everything," Emma said, her mind racing with the implications. "It suggests that Iconians may have an evolutionary predisposition for intimate physical contact, despite their society's long-standing aversion to it." As Emma and her team worked to verify their findings, news of the discovery began to spread through official channels. In a secluded chamber deep within the Iconian military complex, General Kraz received the report with growing alarm. "This human corruption spreads faster than we anticipated," he growled, his skin pulsing with angry red patterns. Turning to his most trusted lieutenant, he barked out orders. "Accelerate our plans. I want our team on Earth to begin sabotaging key human research facilities immediately." The lieutenant nodded, his expression grim. "And what of our operations here on Iconia, sir?" Kraz's eyes narrowed. "Intensify our recruitment efforts. We need more conservative Iconians who understand the threat these humans pose. Prepare for a potential coup against Queen Spica if necessary." As Kraz's covert operations gained momentum, Queen Spica remained blissfully unaware of the growing threat. Her fascination with human intimacy had only increased since her encounter with Alan, and she found herself drawn to the education program. Under the guise of monitoring progress, Spica attended several sessions, watching with rapt attention as Alan explained the intricacies of human relationships and sexual practices. Each demonstration sent shivers of excitement through her body, reawakening the sensations she had found so captivating during her time with Alan. After one particularly engaging session on the emotional aspects of human intimacy, Spica approached Alan, her luminous eyes bright with curiosity. "Alan," she said, her melodious voice tinged with excitement, "I'm beginning to understand the profound impact these practices could have on our society. The volunteers' positive reactions are most encouraging." Alan nodded, careful to maintain a professional demeanor despite the Queen's proximity. "I'm glad you see the potential, Your Majesty. Human intimacy is about more than just physical pleasure. It's a powerful tool for emotional bonding and communication." Spica's skin shimmered with a complex pattern of light that Alan had come to recognize as deep contemplation. "I believe introducing these practices to Iconian society could bring about positive change. Perhaps it's time we consider expanding the program." As Spica and Alan discussed the future of the education program, neither of them noticed the figure lurking in the shadows of the corridor outside. Ambassador Zorn watched the pair with growing concern, his antennae twitching nervously. Zorn had always prided himself on his objectivity, but the Queen's increasing involvement in human affairs troubled him deeply. He knew he had to take action to understand the true effects of human sexuality on Iconian biology. Making his way to his private office, Zorn opened a secure communication channel. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar. Lyra, the Iconian scientist who had recently returned from Earth. "Lyra," Zorn began without preamble, "I have a delicate assignment for you, one that requires the utmost discretion." Lyra's expression remained neutral, but Zorn noticed a subtle flicker of light across her skin, a sign of interest. What do you need, Ambassador? I need you to conduct a series of controlled experiments, Zorn explained. We must understand the full extent of human sexuality's effects on our people. Can I count on your scientific expertise in this matter? Lyra's response was immediate, her voice filled with terrifying excitement. Of course, Ambassador. I would be honored to lead this investigation. As Zorn ended the communication, he couldn't shake the feeling that events were spiraling out of control. Little did he know that his concerns were about to be overshadowed by a threat far greater than he could have imagined. In the depths of space, hidden from both Iconian and human detection, General Kraz's secret fleet of warships began to assemble. The general stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing Earth's vulnerable blue sphere. Soon, Kraz murmured, his voice filled with unwavering drive. Soon we will strike, and this human plague will be purged from our society once and for all. As the pieces continued to move on this interstellar chessboard, Alan Mitchell found himself at the center of a web of secrets, desires, and looming conflict. The fate of two civilizations rested on his shoulders, and the true test of his diplomatic skills was yet to come. As Alan's diplomatic skills continued to be tested, the day of the public demonstration arrived with a palpable tension in the air. The Grand Hall of Unity, an immense arena capable of holding thousands of Iconians, buzzed with anticipation. Holographic projectors hummed to life, ready to broadcast the event to millions across the planet. Alan stood backstage, his heart racing as he reviewed his notes one last time. Queen Spica approached him, her luminous skin pulsing with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Are you ready, Alan? She asked, her melodious voice tinged with anticipation. He nodded, offering a reassuring smile. As ready as I'll ever be, Your Majesty. Remember, we're making history today. As they stepped onto the stage, neither Alan nor Queen Spica were aware of the looming threat. Far above Iconia, General Kraz's fleet began its journey towards Earth. The general's eyes fixed on the broadcast with growing agitation. Alan's voice echoed through the grand hall as he began his presentation. Esteemed Iconians, today we embark on a journey of understanding that will bridge the gap between our species. He started with the basics of human anatomy, using holographic displays to illustrate his points. The Iconian audience watched with a mix of shock and fascination as Alan explained the intricacies of human intimacy. Human touch, Alan said, gently taking Queen Spice's hand, is not just about physical contact. It's a conduit for emotions, a way to express care and affection. As Alan demonstrated various gentle touches and caresses, Queen Spice's initial nervousness began to fade. The audience, at first recoiling at the alien concept, slowly leaned forward in their seats, their curiosity piqued. Suddenly, a gasp rippled through the crowd. Queen Spica's bioluminescent skin began to pulse with intense, vibrant colors, a sight never before witnessed in Iconian history. The swirling patterns of light danced across her form, captivating the audience. In the monitoring room, Dr. Emma Young's eyes widened as she observed the phenomenon. It's the dormant gland, she whispered to her colleagues. It's activating on a scale we never imagined possible. The Iconian audience, connected through their empathic abilities, began to experience echoes of Queen Spica's sensations. Many in the crowd started to glow with similar patterns, their bodies responding to the shared experience. As the demonstration progressed to more intimate acts, the Grand Hall of Unity became a sea of pulsating light. Iconians watching via hologram reported similar experiences, their homes and public spaces transformed into swirling kaleidoscopes of color. Ambassador Zorn, observing from a private booth, felt the diplomatic ground shifting beneath his feet. He immediately opened a secure channel to the Iconian High Council. Esteemed council members, he said urgently, I implore you to reconsider our stance on human-Iconian relations. What we're witnessing here is unprecedented. As the council debated, Lyra burst into the broadcast center, clutching a data pad. She had been running experiments on human-Iconian compatibility, and her findings were staggering. Dr. Young, Lyra called out, her skin flickering with excitement. My research confirms it. Exposure to human intimacy is activating long-dormant neural pathways in our brains. It's enhancing our emotional capacity and overall well-being. On the stage, Alan and Queen Spica were lost in the moment, their focus solely on each other and the incredible response from the audience. As they moved through the final stages of the demonstration, a wave of euphoria swept through the Iconian population. In orbit, General Kraz watched the broadcast with growing conflict. His fleet, now halfway to Earth, awaited his final order. The general's skin pulsed with patterns of confusion and doubt as he witnessed the overwhelmingly positive response from his people. As the demonstration reached its conclusion, Queen Spica stepped forward to address her people, her voice filled with emotion. "My fellow Iconians," she began, her skin still shimmering with vibrant hues, "today we have experienced something truly transformative. The power of human intimacy has awakened something within us, a capacity for emotional connection we never knew we possessed." The Queen's words resonated through the Grand Hall and across the planet. In light of this discovery, I propose a new era of cooperation between humans and Iconians. Let us embrace this change and work together towards a brighter future for both our species. She paused, her expression growing solemn. "Furthermore, I hereby officially cancel any perceived threat against Earth and call for a galactic peace conference to solidify our new alliance." The announcement was met with thunderous applause and a dazzling display of bioluminescence from the Iconian public. Spontaneous celebrations erupted across the planet as Iconians reveled in their newfound emotional expression. However, amidst the jubilation, a small group of traditionalists exchanged worried glances. Led by one of General Kraz's lieutenants, they slipped away from the celebrations, their minds churning with plans to resist the changes sweeping through their society. As news of the successful demonstration and Queen Spica's declaration reached Earth, humanity celebrated the averted crisis, unaware of the complexities still unfolding in space and on Iconia. Alan, standing beside Queen Spica as the Grand Hall erupted in joyous light, felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. He knew that while a significant victory had been achieved, the true challenges of guiding this new era of human-Iconian relations were only just beginning. Alan took a deep breath, savoring the moment of triumph while steeling himself for the challenges ahead. As the Grand Hall emptied and the euphoria of the demonstration began to subside, Queen Spica wasted no time in implementing her vision for a new Iconia. Within days, she announced the creation of the Department of Human-Inspired Intimacy and Emotional Development, HIED. The Queen appointed Dr. Lyra as the department's head, recognizing her expertise in human-Iconian compatibility. Across Iconia, millions of citizens embraced this cultural shift with enthusiasm. The HIED quickly established intimacy centers in major cities, where Iconians could learn and practice human mating methods under expert guidance. Alan found himself working closely with Queen Spica and Dr. Lyra to develop comprehensive educational programs for these centers. "We need to ensure these centers are not just about physical intimacy," Alan explained during a planning session. "They should focus on emotional connections, communication skills, and relationship dynamics." Queen Spica nodded, her skin pulsing with vibrant hues of agreement. "Yes, we must help our people understand the full spectrum of human relationships. This is about more than just mating. It's about enriching our emotional lives." As the intimacy centers opened their doors, long lines of curious Iconians formed outside. Many emerged from their sessions with their bioluminescent skin glowing in patterns never before seen on Iconia. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, General Kraz's fleet hung motionless, suspended between Iconia and Earth. On the bridge of his flagship, Kraz paced back and forth, his skin flickering with conflicting emotions. "Sir," his lieutenant ventured, "what are your orders?" Kraz stopped pacing and stared out at the stars. After a long moment, he spoke. "We return to Iconia. I must face the consequences of my actions." Upon their arrival, Kraz surrendered himself to the royal guard. He was brought before Queen Spica, expecting severe punishment. To his surprise, the queen regarded him with compassion. "General Kraz," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "your actions were misguided, but I believe they came from a place of concern for our people. Instead of punishment, I offer you a chance at redemption." Kraz's antennae twitched in surprise. Your Majesty? You will lead a diplomatic mission to Earth, Queen Spica continued. Your task is to formally apologize for the planned attack and work towards establishing peaceful relations between our species. On Earth, news of the averted crisis and the cultural revolution on Iconia spread rapidly. The United Earth government scrambled to prepare for the upcoming Iconian diplomatic mission. They assembled a team of experts, led by renowned psychologist Dr. Sarah Thompson, to assist in the integration of human intimacy practices into Iconian society. As these events unfolded, not all Iconians welcomed the changes. In a dimly lit room on the outskirts of the capital, Commander Vex, a former subordinate of General Kraz, met with a group of like-minded traditionalists. These human practices threaten the very fabric of our society, Vex hissed, his skin pulsing with angry red patterns. We must take action to preserve our way of life. The group nodded in agreement, their faces set with purpose. Vex outlined his plan to recruit skilled hackers to infiltrate and disrupt the Intimacy Center's computer systems. Back in the royal palace, Dr. Emma Young burst into Alan's office, her eyes wide with excitement. "Alan, you won't believe what we've discovered," she exclaimed, waving a data pad. Sustained exposure to human intimacy practices is leading to increased cognitive function and problem-solving abilities in Iconians. Alan's eyebrows shot up. "That's incredible, Emma. Have you shared this with Queen Spica yet?" Before Emma could reply, Dr. Lyra entered the room, her skin shimmering with excitement. "Alan, Your Majesty," she said, nodding to Queen Spica, who had just arrived. "I have a bold proposal that could revolutionize our understanding of human-Iconian relations." All eyes turned to Lyra as she continued, "I believe we should attempt to create the first human-Iconian hybrid. Such a being could serve as a living bridge between our species, fostering even greater understanding and cooperation." The room fell silent as the implications of Lyra's proposal sank in. Queen Spica's skin flickered with a complex pattern of curiosity and concern. "This is a monumental suggestion, Dr. Lyra," she said carefully. "While I'm intrigued by the potential benefits, we must proceed with the utmost caution and establish strict ethical guidelines." As news of the hybrid project spread, it ignited a firestorm of controversy across both Iconia and Earth. Supporters hailed it as the next logical step in interspecies relations, while critics condemned it as an unnatural abomination. Amidst the growing tensions, Alan received an urgent, encrypted message from Earth. His face paled as he read its contents. A radical human group had stolen classified information about Iconian physiology and was planning to develop a biological weapon capable of reverting Iconians to their pre-awakened state. Alan's mind raced as he considered the implications. If successful, this weapon could undo all the progress they had made, plunging both species back into mistrust and potential conflict. He knew he had to act quickly. Gathering a small team of trusted Iconians, including Lyra, Alan prepared for a covert mission to Earth. Their goal, to locate and neutralize the radical group before they could develop the weapon. As Alan and his team made final preparations for their secret mission, Queen Spica faced mounting pressure from both supporters and opponents of the human-inspired changes. She stood on the balcony of the royal palace, gazing out at the city below, its buildings now adorned with the pulsating lights of millions of emotionally awakened Iconians. The queen's skin shimmered with dedication as she contemplated the challenges ahead. She knew that the decisions made in the coming days would shape the future of not just Iconia, but potentially the entire galaxy. With a deep breath, she turned back to her advisors, ready to navigate the complex path that lay before them. As Queen Spica turned back to her advisors, a familiar face caught her attention. Alan stood at the entrance of the balcony, his expression grim. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "I've received urgent news from Earth. We need to act immediately." Without hesitation, Alan assembled a small team of trusted Iconians, including Dr. Lyra. As they prepared for their covert mission, Alan briefed them on the situation. "A radical human group called Purity Force has stolen classified information about Iconian physiology," he explained, his voice tight with concern. "They're developing a biological weapon that could revert Iconians to their pre-awakened state. Lyra's skin pulsed with alarm. "That would undo everything we've accomplished," she said, her antennae twitching nervously. "Exactly," Alan nodded. "That's why we need to stop them before it's too late." As the team boarded their stealth ship, Queen Spica approached Alan. "Be careful," she said, her skin shimmering with worry. "The future of our species depends on your success." The journey to Earth was tense, with the team using the time to study the limited intelligence they had on Purity Force. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Alan activated their cloaking technology, allowing them to land undetected near the suspected location of the group's hidden laboratory. Using a combination of Iconian sensory abilities and Alan's knowledge of Earth's security systems, the team quickly infiltrated the facility. They moved silently through dimly lit corridors, their bioluminescent skin muted to avoid detection. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the complex. "They've spotted us!" Alan shouted, drawing his weapon. Chaos erupted as Purity Force members poured into the hallway, brandishing an array of weapons. Alan and his team took cover, returning fire with their non-lethal stun weapons. In the midst of the firefight, Lyra spotted a scientist attempting to escape with a vial of glowing liquid. "The weapon!" she cried out, sprinting after him. As Lyra cornered the scientist, he turned and fired a strange device. A burst of energy hit Lyra squarely in the chest, enveloping her in a sickly green glow. She collapsed to the ground, her skin flickering erratically. Alan fought his way to Lyra's side, his heart pounding. He watched in horror as the vibrant patterns on her skin began to fade, her eyes losing their emotional depth. "No, no, no," Alan muttered, cradling Lyra's head. He turned to the rest of the team. "Secure the weapon and all research data. We need to get Lyra out of here now." As the team battled their way out of the facility, Alan's mind raced. He knew they were running out of time to save Lyra and prevent the weapon from being used on a larger scale. Back on their ship, Alan laid Lyra on a medical bed, her condition worsening by the minute. He paced the small medbay, racking his brain for a solution. Suddenly, an idea struck him. It was risky, unconventional, but it might be their only chance. "I need everyone out of here," Alan commanded. The other team members exchanged confused glances, but complied, leaving Alan alone with Lyra. Taking a deep breath, Alan approached Lyra's bedside. He gently took her hand, noting how cold it felt compared to her usual warmth. "Lyra," he said softly, "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm going to try something. I think I can reactivate your awakened state." With that, Alan began to initiate an intimate encounter with Lyra. He started slowly, focusing on generating the pheromones and physical responses that had so profoundly affected Iconians during their first demonstrations. As Alan continued, he noticed a faint flicker of color across Lyra's skin. Encouraged, he intensified his efforts, combining physical touch with whispered words of encouragement and affection. Gradually, Lyra's skin began to pulse with more vibrant hues. Her breathing deepened, and her eyes fluttered open, filled with a mix of confusion and growing awareness. "Alan," she whispered, her voice weak but tinged with emotion. "What's happening?" "You're coming back to us," Alan replied, relief flooding through him. "The weapon, it tried to revert you, but we're fighting it." As Lyra's condition continued to improve, Alan realized the implications of what they had discovered. Not only had they found a potential counter to the biological weapon, but they had also stumbled upon a new frontier in human-Iconian relations. Meanwhile, on Iconia, Queen Spica faced a crisis of her own. Commander Vex and his traditionalist faction had seized control of several intimacy centers, holding Iconians hostage and demanding an end to all human-inspired practices. The Queen stood before an urgent session of the High Council, her skin pulsing with grit and concern. "We cannot give in to these demands," she declared, "but neither can we risk the lives of our people through hasty action." As the Council debated their options, a message arrived from Earth. Alan's team had successfully neutralized the immediate threat from Purity Force and discovered a potential countermeasure to the biological weapon. Queen Spica's antennae twitched with interest as she read the report. An idea began to form in her mind, a bold, potentially controversial plan that could address both the crisis on Iconia and the lingering threat from Earth. "Prepare a planet-wide broadcast," she commanded her advisors. "It's time we address these issues head-on." As the Queen made her way to the broadcast studio, she knew the decision she was about to make would shape the future of Iconia and its relationship with Earth for generations to come. The path ahead was uncertain, but Queen Spica was determined to lead her people towards a future of understanding and unity, no matter the challenges they might face.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.